Thanks for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Lee-Jiun in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. A string of Lotte stores in China are closed after inspections following the group's final approval to provide land for the U.S. missile defense system THAAD and Korea. The high cost of education is adding to the burden of childcare, and many are concerned that this could also hurt parents' retirement plans as well. These stories and more coming right up. But first, Korea's industrial lending has fallen in the fourth quarter, marking a first on-quarter downtrend in 4 years. Fresh data from the Bank of Korea shows that money borrowed by corporations in the October through December period contracted by 0.1% or just under $780 million. The decrease was led by the manufacturing sector, which cut its borrowing by 2.8%. Now, that quarter-to-quarter difference was the biggest gap logged since the central bank began taking records in 2008. On the other hand, the service sector expanded borrowing by 2.3% in the same period. Loans for facilities investment also grew by some $10.6 billion. Hanjin Shipping, once Korea's largest shipping company, is to be removed from the local bourse on Tuesday after it was declared bankrupt last month. After a week-long cleanup trading period, Hanjin saw its stocks plummet by 96% to 30 Korean won, or roughly 2 cents in U.S. currency on its last trading day this morning. Hanjin, once the world's 7th largest shipping company, was declared bankrupt last month. It had billions of dollars of debt under tough industry conditions, including low freight rates due to oversupply and a sharp decline in shipments fueled by slumping global demand. The stock debuted on Korea's benchmark Kospi back in December of 2009 and peaked in 2011 at about $33 per share. And amid the recent fluctuations on the currency front, Korea's foreign reserves posted a decline last month. The Bank of Korea says levels dipped to about $373.9 billion as of the end of February, dropping roughly $130 million from the previous month. Reserves had rebounded in January after falling for 3 straight months. The dip last month was attributed mainly to a slight recovery in the U.S. dollar, which had been on a slide, lowering the value of non-dollar assets. Korea was the world's 8th largest holder of foreign reserves as of the end of January. China topped the list, though its levels fell under $3 trillion to about $2.9 trillion, followed by Japan and Switzerland. The Korean equity market rebounded from early losses during the first session of the week. The investment position of foreign investors still seems to be determining market movements. We're now joined by our markets contributor Choi Jin-seok to talk about overall stock market performance and upcoming market events. Hello, Jin-seok.
Happy to be here.
All right, so how did the stock market end on the first day of this week?
Both the Kospi and the K stock market closed the first session of the week in positive territory. The Kospi rose by 0.13% to close at 2081.36, while the K stock rebounded by 0.55% to close at 604.05. In early hours, the Kospi once fell below 2070 due to measures from China believed to be in retaliation against Seoul's THAAD deployment, concerns over U.S. interest rate hikes, and North Korea's missile launch. However, as foreign investors started buying shares, the index was able to erase most of the losses. Samsung Electronics, the largest stock by market cap, broke another record high, while SK Hynix enjoyed a decent rally helped by its robust earnings report. These catalysts helped improve sentiment among foreigners. The K stock rebounded from Friday's sharp drop by a relatively large margin, mostly helped by stock buying by both foreigners and institutional investors.
Now, one of the factors that spooked market sentiment last week and also today was the potential rate hike coming from the U.S. Fed this month. So are there any market events that investors should take a closer look at in this regard?
The U.S. employment report unveiled on Friday is expected to draw a lot of attention from investors, particularly at a time like this when expectations for a March rate hike have been surging. As the U.S. Fed strongly signaled that it very well could pull the trigger in March, CME Fed Watch, a futures market betting on future rate hikes, now shows a 79.7% possibility of a hike this month. Therefore, another robust gain in jobs would raise such expectations even further. Experts project the U.S. labor market created around 190,000 jobs last month. And now on Wednesday, before the release of the Labor Department report, we'll be able to see a brief picture of the U.S. labor market through ADP private sector job gains. Along with employment numbers on a Monday, investors will want to tune into what Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari has to say about future policy directions, especially since he has voting rights at the FOMC this year.
In terms of global monetary policy, we can't overlook the importance of the upcoming ECB meeting on Thursday. So what are the expectations on that?
Although most experts expect the ECB will keep its current stance at the Thursday meeting, we can't rule out the possibility that the central bank will make changes before the Fed makes its next rate hike. First, there have been recent improvements in the Eurozone economy. February's consumer prices rose by more than 2% for the first time since January of 2013. The pace of economic recovery in the region is now considered even faster than that of the U.S. Second, there have been strong voices arguing that the ECB should start its tightening process. The central bank has kept negative interest rates for the past 3 years, purchasing massive amounts of assets to inject liquidity. Therefore, countries including Germany and Denmark are now pushing the ECB to start collecting money from markets. So although there will likely be no policy changes at this month's meeting, there is ample reason to closely monitor the event.
Now, are there any market factors that might heighten volatility in the domestic market?
Both options and futures will face their expiration date on Thursday. Experts think there will be more selling than buying towards the expiration date. This means the event could be a negative catalyst for the Korean equity market. In addition to this, the Constitutional Court's ruling on the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye seems imminent. Some experts even expect the court might make the decision within this week ahead of the retirement of acting court President Lee Jeong-mi. As we've seen in Brazil's case, if the decision meets market expectations, it could give a boost to the equity market as well.
Now, despite today's modest rebound, companies related to Chinese consumption still suffered a correction. So do analysts believe that such trends will continue for the near term?
Right. That's why many experts forecast heightened volatility due to concerns over U.S. rate hikes, as well as China's response to Korea's THAAD deployment. What's more worrisome is that stocks related to spending by Chinese consumers, including cosmetics, tour companies and duty-free stores have been hit very hard after a series of measures from Beijing. Therefore, further declines in the share prices of related companies are expected. That's why experts advise investors to focus on undervalued blue-chip stocks rather than growth stocks or small to mid-cap stocks that are more vulnerable to such uncertainty. And while we're on China, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said Sunday that the government aims to deliver economic growth of around 6.5% in 2017, compared with last year's goal of 6.5% to 7%. And that's below the rate of 6.7% at which the world's second largest economy grew last year. And it means the Chinese economy is looking for more stability going forward.
All right, a lot to look forward to this week. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Fears of Beijing's retaliatory actions persist here in Korea. Over in China, Korea's Lotte Group continues to be pounded by pressure. Its Chinese website remains down, and a growing number of its Lotte marts are being forced to close. Our Eunice Kim has the latest.
Hours after Lotte Group signed off on a land swap deal with the Korean government where the controversial THAAD missile shield would be placed, a warning from Beijing.
I would like to stress that China firmly opposes the deployment of THAAD in South Korea and will resolutely take necessary measures to safeguard our own security and interests. The U.S. and South Korea will have to face all consequences.
In the days to come, the retail giant's online presence would come under attack. Starting with its Chinese website, its section on a popular Chinese online mall Joybuy, to the Lotte duty-free websites in multiple languages. One by one, they all crash. The strike traced to Chinese IP addresses. While Lotte duty-free was back online after several hours of paralysis, Lotte's main Chinese website remains down for the 7th straight day, inviting suspicions state actors could be involved. On the ground, Lotte was forced to shutter nearly a quarter of its 99 Lotte Marts in China as of Monday afternoon, following surprise inspections that sources say was conducted only on the brand's shops. That number is expected to grow. What Korea's 5th largest conglomerate is concerned about is the growing tide of anger among consumers in its biggest overseas market, as calls to boycott the conglomerate ride social media and get louder. Reports say there are already movements to block Lotte products from distribution channels of China's largest brick-and-mortar stores, as the Korean-Japanese retail giant is left with little else to defend itself in fear of a wider backlash. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And China has been evaluated as the country with the most exclusive market. According to the latest edition of the Global Enabling Trade Report, China ranked 61st among 136 countries with an average score of 4.5 out of 7. The report ranks countries according to how well they enable the free flow of goods and investments through their borders by measuring 4 areas, and here they are: market accessibility, border administration, transportation infrastructure, and business environment. And though its overall grade was 61st, China was one of the lowest in terms of market accessibility, with an average tariff rate of 11%. Singapore topped the list, followed by the Netherlands and Hong Kong. Britain and Germany were also among the top 10, while Korea ranked 27th. Korea has banned U.S. poultry and egg imports after a strain of the highly pathogenic H7 bird flu virus was detected at a commercial chicken farm in Tennessee. This is according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, which put the ban into effect starting this Monday. U.S. heat-treated chicken meat and egg products will still be allowed into the country, but the restrictions follow an earlier ban on imports from Spain, also due to an outbreak of bird flu. This is expected to limit Korea's import options as it struggles to prop up supply and replenish stocks that were wiped out from a massive avian influenza outbreak last year. As of now, the import of birds is limited to 3 countries: New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, while chicken meat is allowed from 6 countries. Korea's consumer sentiment has fallen to the lowest level among some 60 countries for nearly 2 years. According to a consumer confidence survey conducted by market tracker AC Nielsen Korea, Korea's fourth quarter results hit 43, the lowest among 63 countries. Figures below 100 reflect stronger pessimism, while over 100 indicate optimism. The research organization also added that nearly half of those surveyed say they would rather save than spend. While global consumer confidence rose 2 points to 101 in the fourth quarter compared to the previous 3 months, that of Korea fell 3 points. Raising a child is no easy job, especially when it comes to the costs involved. New findings show that related expenses are getting too high as parents look for better education options for their children. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
Nearly $350,000 US is how much it takes to raise a child in Korea these days. According to NH Investment and Securities, back in 2006, it used to cost around $203,000 to nurture a child for the first 22 years of their life. But in a matter of a little over a decade, that figure has nearly doubled to an estimated $347,000 this year. The biggest culprit? Private education. Findings by the securities firm reveal that the lowest budget for education up until university was about $33,000. That's excluding all private education. But on the other end of the spectrum is top-notch schooling, starting from English immersion kindergartens to private elementary schools and specialized high schools. In that case, parents need to shoulder over $274,000, over 3 times the amount required for a minimal level of private education. The problem with this is not just the cost burden itself, but the fact that it eats into funds that parents could otherwise use to prepare for life after retirement. As this imbalance can later come back to strain their adult children, experts advise that parents place equal importance on both matters.
It would be best to budget about 10% of your income for each child. If you have 2 children, you can extend it up to 20%.
Experts say that as recent trends now suggest children do not consider themselves solely responsible for looking after the needs of their elderly parents, families should keep a good balance on how they spend their money so as not to create a vicious circle. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today, but we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and see you soon.